right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, we're going to do mostly preview stuff for tomorrow's Legion Sports Festival. Honestly, there really hasn't been a whole lot going on this week besides just kind of the build-up to Legion. I think the beginning of the month was just so exciting with Pittsburgh and New York, and there were so many big names in those shows. There was so much stuff going on those 2 weeks. With this lineup in the Cali Pro lineup, it's been a little bit more of a tame, mild conversation around it because the lineup, they're good lineups. They're just not as exciting as the way the month started. And there's just not as many like big name killers to talk about updates from going into some of these shows. So first, I wanted to talk about Patrick Moore. Patrick Moore is competing in the Legion this weekend. I actually talked to somebody that saw Patrick and talked to Patrick in person at the athletes meeting, the weigh-ins or whatever it was, for Legion. His name was Steven. Shout out to Steven. So he saw Patrick in person, and he said, surprisingly, Patrick was the guy he was the most impressed by as far as him potentially being a dark horse. Now, if you look at these updates that Patrick posted on his story, I think these might be the same updates that Steven was telling me about, because he said Patrick was showing him these updates on his phone of how he's looking going into the show. And we talked about in the last video how Patrick was putting up these side-by-side comparisons. I'll show you guys that again here too, as far as the Cali prep versus this prep. And how he does look significantly sharper, tighter, a little bit fuller even in the updates for this prep versus last week. And apparently, for this show, he coached himself. But last week for Cali, he was still working with a coach, and I believe it was Chris Aceto again. But he made a big change, so that's the difference that you're seeing in these pictures. Last week he was working with a coach. This week he's not, and it looks like, at least so far, you are seeing a noticeable difference in his physique. How that's going to play out for him on stage, I guess remains to be seen. But like I said, this guy that saw him in person said he has Patrick as his dark horse to maybe even crack the top 3 here, which I also think is possible. And I said that in the last video, like, this isn't the deepest lineup. It's definitely not as deep as, Pittsburgh, New York. Maybe you could argue it's not even as deep as Cali was last weekend. And I'm looking back at the video now of Patrick from that Cali show this past weekend, where he was 10th, by the way. So that does say something. It wasn't a super deep lineup. And he was not only not in the first call-out, but he was outside. Well, he was in the top 10, but 10th. And I'm looking at this video. He looks very flat, I think is the first thing that I noticed watching him pose here. And his conditioning is just off. You're not seeing that detail really anywhere in his physique, but it really jumps out to me in the legs in particular. The legs had, just very minimal separation. And I think, if you go back to when Patrick was really at his peak, I believe it was the 2019 Mr. Olympia where he cracked the top 10 there, it was really the combination of him having a very aesthetically pleasing open bodybuilding physique, but he also had a really, really tight conditioning, a lot of detail on his physique with that combination of having that aesthetically pleasing structure. That was when he was at his deadliest. That was when he was at his best. And I don't think we've seen Patrick return to that level of conditioning since then. And I'll be honest, the Cali Pro, I didn't talk much about Patrick. He wasn't in the first call-out. And honestly, I think Cali was one of his worst looks. I mean, it might have been the lighting here. I don't think the lighting was super flattering at the Cali show, and this background was kind of distracting. But I think Cali was one of his worst looks. But if you go over to these updates that we're seeing from him this week, after just watching that Cali video, look at the difference you can see in Patrick's legs at this physique update picture versus what you saw from him on stage in Cali. It's a big difference. And granted, obviously, a physique update is going to be taken under, optimal lighting, best angle, better camera. It's going to be different than how it's going to look on stage, of course. But in the stage video, I don't think you're seeing anything close to cross-striation level of detail on Patrick's quads. In these updates that he's posting, you're seeing cross-striated quads, which is way different than what you saw from him on stage in Cali. It is a noticeable difference. And again, maybe that could change between now and when he steps on stage. But I think this is a very significant, very noticeable difference between this picture and what we just saw from him on stage in Cali. So I am rooting for Patrick here. I hope he makes a good comeback and tightens up significantly for this show, because I do feel like this is one of those lineups where it is a possibility to maybe jump a lot of placings from the previous show. Like I said, it's not the deepest, not the strongest lineup. And if Patrick really looks significantly better, this is the type of show where maybe he could jump up into that first call out from just being in 10th place last weekend. Now, that being said, let's move on to Blessing Awodabu. So Blessing posted this update to his story, very similar, honestly, to the updates that Patrick Moore posted. And look, I'll be honest, I think that Patrick looked more impressive, at least from the leg standpoint, than Blessing's update does. I really think, based on the updates that we've seen from Blessing, that he's not going to be in the best shape here. Now, again, like I said, I talked to someone who was at the show, and he also talked to Blessing, and he said when he asked Blessing, he asked him something to the effect of, "You think you're going to win? Are you here to win?" And he said that Blessing responded and said, I'm here to have fun and put on a good show," which typically, that does not sound like someone who knows they're bringing their all-time best. It kind of sounds like someone that knows they're off. So even though on paper, like just in terms of notoriety, Blessing might be the biggest name in this lineup as far as being the most well-known guy, he might not be top two. You look back at these updates, these are updates he's posted over the past few days, I'm just not seeing the level of condition from him here to where I think he's going to be challenging. I at least don't think he's going to be pushing for first. I don't think this conditioning is going to push Tonio Burton, because I think Tonio looks insane. So it's hard to say what to expect from Blessing here, because on one hand, we haven't seen him on stage in a while. He's kind of went back to the drawing board to try to make improvements and come back better. This is like his big return to the stage. But I mean, we're one day out now. So like the updates that we just looked at from Patrick, the updates that we're looking at from Blessing, we're only a day away from the show. I just don't think this is enough. Let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments below. What do you think of these recent updates from Blessing, and how do you think he's going to do here at his big comeback show, the Legion Sports Festival? I don't know if I'm being too critical. I just don't think that he's going to be in the mix here for the win. And I think we should also look at Bruno Santos. So Bruno just competed in Cali. He's the highest placer from Cali in this lineup. Regan took first. Sauce took second. Leandro Perez was third. Bruno was fourth place. Florian Pearson was right behind him, and Florian is also doing the show. This is the latest update from Bruno at one day out. So on paper, him being the highest placer from last weekend's show, he also has won pro shows in the... I'm trying to think what show he won. He qualified for the Olympia. Yeah, he definitely qualified for the Olympia last year, right? So he must have won one of the European shows last year, like the Big Man Weekend or the Portugal show or something. So he is a show winner. He's been to the Olympia. So I feel like his name should kind of be in this conversation as, you know, he could be in the mix for the title here. He's a pretty big dude out of Brazil. And if he comes in a little bit tighter, I think he'd be really dangerous. If he were tighter in Cali, I think there would be a good argument for him cracking into that third place spot and kind of being in the mix, maybe up against Sauce in that second to third place range. But tighter conditioning in Legion, he could be very dangerous. And I also mentioned Florian, who we just saw at the Cali show. He placed right behind Bruno. But of course, my pick to win the Legion Sports Festival. There's not a new update from him that we didn't talk about in yesterday's video, but my pick to win is without a doubt Tonio Burton. I think this is the next level of his physique. I think kind of unlike Blessing, the time that he took off, because we haven't seen him in over a year now, I guess, right? So he took about a year off the stage, Tonio did. I feel like you can really see those changes reflected in his physique. He looks bigger. He looks fuller. He even said in the caption of his latest post that he's more than 15 pounds heavier, or about 15 pounds heavier than the last time he took the stage last year. And you can see if he really added 15 pounds, it must have mostly been muscle, because he is diced. He's dialed in. He's lean. And if he's 15 pounds heavier, this lean, this is going to be a very dangerous version of his physique. Like I said, he's been top 8 at the Olympia recently. The only guy coming close to that, as far as Olympia placings go, is Patrick Moore, but that wasn't recently when Patrick Moore was 10th. Hell, that was 6 years ago now, wasn't it? But I think you can see that progress in his physique in a way that I don't think you can see it in Blessing's physique, particularly in Blessing's lower body. And I think he's got this show in the bag. To me, he has by far the most impressive updates out of anybody going into this show. And as far as second, third, fourth, honestly, I have no idea. I think at this point, I might be leaning towards Bruno in second more than Blessing or anybody else. Rewatching Bruno's Cali Pro performance, I think that the size that he brought, the conditioning that he brought, I think he's more balanced than a guy like Blessing is, and maybe even more than a guy like Patrick. And as I rewatch that video of Bruno from the Cali Pro, the more I'm kind of leaning towards him as maybe being the next in line after Tonio. And then I consider the fact that Bruno can say he's won a show. He's been to the Olympia, which is not something that a lot of the names in this lineup can say. So on paper, he's got a pretty good resume going into this as well. So I'm kind of leaning towards top 2 being Bruno and Tonio. And actually, I wanted to add in here, Collosus Ken. He was actually top 6 at the New York Pro. And I didn't talk about him much in the New York Pro recap video, but his physique was actually really impressive. I think a lot of the focus was, obviously so much on Nick Walker, William Bonac. Then you had the Crizzo versus Regan call-out, where a lot of people thought that Regan was going to pull off the upset over Crizzo and be top 3. So I feel like that was a lot of the focus of the show, and kind of the rest of that top 6 wasn't as talked about. But I thought Ken looked really good at that New York show. And I don't believe, he didn't do Cali. So he might be a wild card here as well. He might be a guy. Actually, I think he definitely will be a guy that cracks the top 6 here. But think about, because none of those guys from New York are going to be here. So he could very well be in the mix here too. Nick's not going to be here. Bonac's not going to be here. Regan's not going to be here. Crizzo's not going to be here. Sauce is not going to be here. So literally, this is actually a good point. Literally everybody that beat him in New York is not going to be at this show. Because he was 6th, Sauce 5th, So that would move him up significantly. He's probably going to be in the mix here too. So I'll definitely be watching for how he looks at this show. He could very well be in that top 3 mix. Who knows? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And maybe Blessing is able to get into that top 3. I don't know, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below as you look at this competitor list right here. What are your guys' predictions for the Legion Sports Festival? The only prediction I'm comfortable in saying for this show is that I think Tonio is winning this one. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.